In this lesson, we are going to learn about nature of light. Okay. So if we observe in this, plant utilizes sunlight to produce food molecule. So this light contains a tiny discrete particles known as photons. These photons carry energy and it is termed as quantum. And energy is always related to the wavelength. So this is an electromagnetic spectrum. So this spectrum helps us to learn the relationship between energy and wavelength. If we observe near gamma rays, energy is being increased and wavelength is being decreased. Whereas near radio waves, energy is being decreased and wavelength is increased. So by this, we can learn that energy is inversely proportional to the wavelength. And in plants, we require only visible rays. The reason is that because of two things. One is because of chlorophyll and another one is energy. Okay. So we know that the planet Earth allows only three rays to pass through it. That is 4% of ultraviolet rays, 52% of infrared rays and 44% of visible rays. But as I said before, plant utilizes only visible rays, whereas it is not utilizing ultraviolet rays and infrared rays. The reason is that because of energy. Ultraviolet rays contains high energy and this energy cannot be controlled by the plants. And apart from that, the plant contains pigments which prevents the entry of ultraviolet rays. Whereas coming to the infrared rays, this infrared rays contains light the energy that doesn't enough means the energy which is produced by the infrared rays is not suitable for photosynthesis because it contains too low energy. Whereas coming to the visible rays, as I said before, because of two reasons, the visible rays is being accepted by the plant. First reason, because of tetrachiral rings in the chlorophyll molecule. Second reason is that because of energy. So this energy involves in transferring the electron from one place to the another place, leading to the photosynthesis. Okay. Now in this light, we are going to learn about two spectrums, that is absorption spectrum and action spectrum. So what is absorption spectrum? So absorption spectrum helps us to learn which pigment absorbs which wavelength, and it is obtained by using spectrophotometer. Okay. So if we observe in this graph, on y-axis we have taken absorption of light and on x-axis we have taken range, that is wavelength. Okay. And we have chosen three pigments, that is chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B and carotenoids. And if we observe in this graph, chlorophyll A and B shows two peaks near two regions, that is here and here, whereas in red region and near blue and violet region. Okay. Whereas beta carotene shows the region near green color. Okay. So by this we can learn that these chlorophylls or these pigments absorbs the wavelength at different particular ranges. And we may get a doubt if they are observing or absorbing the wavelength at 400 or 450 nanometers or near violet or blue region or in red region, why the plants are green in color. The reason is that because of light. Light strikes an object and it can do one of the three things, that is transmission, reflection and absorption. Okay. So transmission means what? Light passes through the object. Reflection means light bounces off the object, and absorption means light does not pass through or reflect. Okay. So if we observe in this graph, what happens? Chlorophyll does not show any peak near green color region. They show only peaks near violet region and red region. Okay. Means what? Here the plant reflecting green color. Okay. So leaves are green because the chlorophyll in leaves reflect green light and absorbs the other colors. That is the main reason why the plant appears green in color, even though they are observing violet region or red region. The reason is that because of reflection of green color. Okay. The effectiveness of blue and red color stimulates higher photosynthesis. Means what? As I said before, this shows peaks near violet or blue region and red color region. And here we are talking that the plant shows higher photosynthesis in blue and red color. Okay. So this is neatly explained by an Engelmann experiment. So what he did means he took a slide, and onto that slide he placed an algal filament, okay, and a drop of water containing aerobic bacteria. So what is an aerobic bacteria? The bacteria which requires oxygen to synthesize or to stimulate. Okay. So now what he did means allowed to pass a ray of light through a prism, and he later observed under the microscope. What he observed is that these aerobic bacteria after some time start aggregating towards violet region and towards red region. So by this he confirmed that the rate of photosynthesis is more near blue or violet region and near red region. Okay, and this experiment is neatly explained by an action spectrum. Okay, so this is your action spectrum. So this action spectrum helps us to learn that wavelength of light that triggers photosynthesis. Okay, means what action spectrum means? The wavelength of light that triggers photosynthesis. And this photosynthesis is always calculated by the amount of oxygen released or by the amount of carbon dioxide absorbed. Okay, so if we observed in this graph, on x-axis wavelength and on y-axis rate of photosynthesis. And as I said before, the rate of photosynthesis is calculated by using the amount of oxygen evolved or the amount of carbon dioxide absorbed. Okay. So now what he did means he superimposed the action spectrum onto the absorption spectrum, and he explained that. So this is your carotene, and this is your chlorophyll A molecule, and this is your chlorophyll B molecules. So what happens? Carotene fails to, this is not carotene. Okay. So if you observe, chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B show peaks near violet and red region. But if we observe, high amount of action was observed by chlorophyll A molecule, that here and here. That is the reason we can say that chlorophyll A considered as a reaction center. Means what? Because it performs more photosynthesis than it actually absorbs the light. Okay. So that is the main reason that chlorophyll A is considered as a reaction center. Why? Because it produces a high rate of photosynthesis near these two regions when compared to other pigments. Okay, so this is with your action and absorption spectrum. So absorption spectrum helps us to learn which wavelength is being absorbed by which pigment, and action spectrum helps us to learn the rate of photosynthesis being produced by different pigment. Okay, so coming to the action spectrum and absorption spectrum. Okay, so difference between action and absorption spectrum. So the absorption spectrum indicates the wavelength of light absorbed by each pigment, example chlorophyll, and whereas action spectrum indicates the overall rate of photosynthesis at each wavelength of light. And coming to the second difference, it is a graphical representation. Means absorption spectrum is a graphical representation of amount of light of different wavelength absorbed by a pigment, whereas action spectrum is a graphical representation of the rate of photosynthesis at different wavelength of light. Whereas absorption spectrum is studied directly, whereas action spectrum is studied in relationship with either oxygen evolved or carbon dioxide absorbed. Whereas absorption spectrum requires a single exposure of full light, whereas action spectrum requires the study of light utilization at various wavelengths. Thank you for watching this video.